It's me, Greg Shapiro, and we're back from holiday with some big news. Reporting on this special edition from within the United States of Europe, we can now say that the EU has new leadership. 3 months after the EU elections last May, the new Council President for Europe will be Poland's Donald Tusk, joining the Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. It is not yet known what the agenda of the two new top leaders will be. However, with names like Juncker and Tusk, most people assume their agenda will be fighting crime, kicking ass, and taking names. Also announced over the weekend was the replacement for outgoing Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton, introducing Europe's new foreign policy chief, the current Italian Foreign Minister Francesca Mogherini, who is known for her relative lack of experience and for not being Silvio Berlusconi. So, correction, perhaps we are not dealing with a crime-fighting duo like Juncker and Tusk, but perhaps more of a crime-fighting team, sort of like the Avengers. And like the Avengers, perhaps the first battle will have to be internal. In this case, which of them, perhaps Donald Tusk, gets to take on the new Dr. Doom of Vladimir Putin in the Ukraine? Of course, Ukraine will not be the only top foreign policy agenda with the new EU leadership. However, the Middle East will play undoubtedly a very large role, specifically the plight of religious minorities in the embattled IS or Islamic State region in Iraq and Syria. Some of these ethnic minorities have a diaspora, and many of them are indeed living in the European Union. And we thought it might be time to get to know some of them. In recent weeks, we have been flooded with violent images from Iraq and Syria, some of which are too gruesome to show here, and some of which we are already way too familiar with. However, a question that is perhaps not being asked often enough is, what is the EU doing to prevent violence against peaceful religious minorities in the region? One of which is the Assyrian Christians, who have been active in Iraq and Syria for millennia. And to tell us more about this minority, we have a representative of the Assyrian European Council, Mrs Attiya Gamri. Thank you for being with us. And obviously there's a lot of history which we can't go into right now, but looking to the future, now there is a new opening with foreign policy in the EU. Is your lobbying effort going to be more directed at Washington or perhaps at Brussels?
Well, Greg, Assyrians and lobby, well, they never win a golden medal for lobbying, but we are starting, and lobbying in Washington is very important for the Assyrians because the actions of the US policy of the last 10 years has directly something to do with the current situation in Iraq. And Brussels, well, Greg, Brussels have huge words about the human rights, and what's going on today in Iraq is a human rights disaster. And also, Assyrians have historically a relationship with Europe because they fought during the First World War in Iraq with the British Army. And the British Army promised them an own land those days. And we all know this never happened.
So, some recent history with the Americans, some unfinished history with the British, and from what I understand, many tragic incidents back through the 2,500 years of Assyrian history. Now, Assyrian Christianity is known for its many different factions, but is there any one unifying factor?
Yes, that's right. We have different branches in our church in the Middle East, but most of them are based on very small, different interpretations of the Bible. So the differences are not big. But we have one in common thing, that's the language. In the church, everybody speaks the Aramaic language, and you might know that Jesus Christ spoke this language, and also the Bible is written in this language. So the language is an in common factor among the Christians in the Middle East.
Now, one last question, and this is the toughie. Obviously, the EU has new management, and they're going to be distracted by big-ticket items like Ukraine, the economic sanctions and the economy in general, jihadis who may or may not be coming back and forth from Iraq and Syria. So Ms. Gamri, in your own words, can you explain why the EU leaders, why Europeans, and hey, I live in Amsterdam, why should I care so much about your cause?
Well, I understand you asking this question, Greg, but if the Christians leave Iraq, we won't have diversity in religion and not in ethnicity. We need, for a stable Iraq, diversity. Diversity in ethnicity like the Arab, the Kurds, the Assyrians, but we also need Christians and Muslims for a stable Iraq. And this stability has influence on the whole Middle East. And if the Middle East is stable, you in Amsterdam, but also in Washington and Brussels, need this. And we shouldn't think that Middle East is far away and we don't have anything to do with this. Of course, Europe has always have something with the Middle East. But also the Assyrians, they shaped the Middle East. They are part of it. They gave a lot to the Middle East, and I think that they should stay in the Middle East. But Brussels and Washington should help them, to support them, to protect themselves in the Middle East.
Ms. Attiya Gamri from the Assyrian European Council, thank you for joining us. And on a lighter note, if you're looking for someone to champion your cause, perhaps give a Hollywood-style dramatization, maybe we need to enlist the help of a famous figure, someone who's no stranger to making entire Hollywood films in archaic languages, but perhaps back from when he was cool. That's when we can associate Assyrian Christians with freedom! And that's all for this special episode. So, from my personal United States of Europe, I'm Greg Shapiro saying thanks. See you next time.